Hi everyone, welcome to this week's webinar. We're resuming after a couple of weeks of a break. Both Salomon and I were out of town travelling, so it's good to be back and to be communicating with you again through our weekly webinar. So we're going to just jump in, and this is recorded as well, and of course will be posted on the website so that you'll be able to reference this later. Also remember, Salomon and I are always available by email if you have specific questions for us. Okay, so to get started, we'll start with our updates. Wanted to just congratulate everyone who's starting to really actively use Workplace as a way of communicating. We're seeing a lot of great work happening. Two of our colleges, Hartnell and Golden West, have spaces and activities that are getting up and running, and it's really great to see the way that they're using their spaces even as they are being constructed and assembled. Cabrillo has a new ceramic printer which has a cool video on Workplace if you want to have a look. And Foothill College is launching their Makerspace certificate, specialist certificate this month. So there's some information on there. And the great thing that we're starting to see happen too is that people are sharing resources specifically on things like design thinking, resources for project documentation, and there are discussions starting about equipment recommendations, specifically things like sewing machines. So jump in on those if you have information to share, or if you're looking for information on those particular items. We also shared the press release template that Karen created a few weeks ago, and that's now on Workplace as well. So please use that as you need it to develop your own press releases, work with your own information office or PR office to get that information out to your own social media networks, etc. We're also pleased to see more people are posting blogs on their activities and news and upcoming events. That's great. Remember that all of this information that's posted becomes a great way of showing and telling our story and showing what we're doing, which ultimately will really help in the sustainability of our projects. So great. Thanks to everyone who's really getting involved in that. Also just wanted to do a special call out to Sac City. They've linked their Makerspace website to the CCC Maker page for their college. So they have some basic information on the page, but then there's a link to their whole other website. Go and have a look at it. It's fantastic. There's some great ideas in there and a lot of energy and information. So thanks for that. Big news is the date for the International Symposium on Academic Makerspaces, ISAM, is confirmed. It's August 3rd until 5th, and it's great. It's in California this time at Stanford. The websites are on the link there. It would be great if you can attend. Students can attend for only $100. The early bird registration, which I believe ends in early June, is $550. So jump in and register for that soon. We are also inviting colleges to submit proposals for either a paper or a poster presentation or a video. And those abstracts for papers are due April 9th. If you are interested in writing a paper for submission to this, please let me know. Bree Lindsay from the California Council on Science and Technology is willing to help colleges with developing an abstract. I'm also willing to jump in and help. We've been presenting at this conference for the last 2 years, and so we think we can offer you some help from our experience. So let us know about that.
I just wanted to add, Deborah, for
I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
International Makerspace to definitely everyone to see themselves as a contributor to very much an international discussion where there's institutions from across the world showing what they're doing, and based on I would correct me if I'm wrong, Deborah, but what we're doing here is actually being seen at a world stage at this venue. And I encourage everyone, and what you're sharing and doing and developing within your students and employers, that's quite unique because as many of you have developed your systems, they're very open, they're inclusive, they're using a collaborative network of all the 24 colleges that are participating in this. And this is something that should be touted, and I encourage everyone to, present at this conference and sort of stake your claim at a world stage. So I encourage everyone.
That's right, and they're definitely very interested in the work that we've been doing. So CCC Maker is definitely on their radar. Community colleges are figuring more prominently in the development of maker spaces and in participation in the conference. So
Yeah.
please, jump in. You're a really valuable part of this process, and it's a great way to show our strength and our potential. So, yeah, thanks, Salomon. Couple of other updates. We are working with Kumu at the moment. They're starting work on the statewide meta map, which will incorporate all of the Kumu maps from all of our colleges. So they're going to start working on that, doing some background analytics and organizing some data within the next week or two. So what we would really appreciate is if everyone could get your Kumu map up to date as quickly as possible, so that we can ensure that all of your great connections of your ecosystem are included in the meta map that's being compiled. It will be overlaid over a geographical map, so we'll be able to see how the ecosystem is actually evolving and its distribution across the state. So that's a really exciting development. March 9, CCC Maker will be presenting at the CCC AOE conference in Sacramento. So if you're attending that conference, look for us. It'll be on the Friday. Also, we've sponsored a booth at the Bay Area Maker Fair from May 18th to May 20th, and we'd like to talk to colleges who are interested in participating in some student-centered outreach events for that Maker Fair. We will be approaching it differently from the way we did last year, so we would need to talk with you directly about how your participation would be included. We definitely want it to be based on student projects and really representing the work that's being done within our community of practice. Also, the date has been set for the Maker Ed convening. It'll be in October in San Jose, and CCC Maker will have an active presentation in that one as well. Okay. We sent out a link for colleges to book a 1 hour one-on-one session with Salomon and me. We'd like to be able to help you reconcile your current work plan and budget now that we're at the midway point through the first year. We also want to help you plan for your carryover. Remember, you can only carry over 10% of your funding into year 2, and there needs to be a plan associated with that. So all of this, of course, ties into strategizing your year 2 outcomes, because you'll be developing your work plan and budgets for year 2 as we move forward. We also will be sharing with you the dashboard for your individual college metrics during this meeting. And Salomon, do you want to have a quick word about that?
Yeah, we'll be verifying some of the information that you've been submitting over the Q1 and Q2 and making certain that some of the metrics, as Deborah mentioned, that you've submitted are adequate to your work plan, and if so, how we can help you address certain metrics that maybe haven't been reported or haven't been able to report for one reason or another. And it really helps us sort of strategize and plan future webinars, maybe communications or assistance to the colleges at large, or even connect you with someone who's been attempting something at their college. So anyhow, so that's what the review is about, and to give some assistance in this fashion by looking at your quarterly reviews. I'm planning to send everyone, once you have your designated time, the actual metrics so we can talk through it, and look forward to addressing everyone at the meetings.
Great. Yeah, so make sure you use that link and enter your college, just your name and your college is fine. The link for the Zoom meeting is at the top of each column. And we do ask that prior to meeting with you, that you review the previous webinar, webinar 10, which goes into more detail on the mid-year review. And there's also a slide deck that you can download for that. This is one of the slides from that webinar and from that slide deck, and it gives you an idea of the schedule and the flow of planning, and how we're asking you to use your existing reporting to help you to refine your planning moving forward. You can see this is complex. There's a lot of due dates, and we want to make sure that everyone is clear on the path moving forward. This is an example of the dashboard data. That's the collective data for all the colleges at this point. Also, we just a few days ago sent out the Eventbrite link for the Work-Based Learning Symposium at Glendale College on the 16th of March. We really want everyone to participate in this. It's a really great opportunity to hear from business and industry organizations. We have a panel of business intermediaries and industry representatives to kick off the event. We'll be talking or having a group presentation from 3 of our leading colleges who have developed internship systems that respond to their individual needs. And we believe you're going to find a lot of opportunities to think about how you can develop your system based on the leadership from these 3 existing colleges. We're also want to help you identify opportunities and some hurdles that you can then address in your action plan as you move forward. And it's a great opportunity, once again, to build our community of practice. We're doing one symposium in the south, here in Glendale, and then in April we have another one in Folsom Lake, which will focus on curriculum. But just remember, colleges from both the north and the south are welcome to attend either or both symposia. Everyone is welcome. And we're inviting colleges to send a team, and specifically for the Southern California one, if you have a work experience coordinator, please make sure that you include them in your team. We're asking colleges to limit the team to 3 members so that we can accommodate everyone in the space. However, just if for some reason you do have additional people that you would like to bring, please contact us, and if the numbers are available, we may be able to include more.
And just a little note, some of you may call your folks the internship coordinators, the folks interfacing with the students and preparing them for that activity, the programmatic activity within your makerspace. So please invite them, or even if you have an employer who wants to learn how they can be a better partner, that would be ideal if you would bring someone that is looking to work with you.
Yeah, and actually, Salomon, do you want to mention the students at Glendale who have been participating in some of these additional activities? It's a great opportunity to meet them. And
absolutely. Just a shout out to Glendale students. They helped me out specifically when we were invited as a CCC Maker initiative to the Link Learning Conference out here in Anaheim just last week. And the students from Glendale were participating within their pop-up makerspace within that conference. And I have to commend the folks there at Glendale. They've been developing leadership within this group of students. They can articulate the benefit to the makerspace movement. So I think as a body, all of us should applaud those students who stood up at Glendale and articulated their benefit as community college students to the many folks that were at the Link Learning Conference. So you will get to meet many of them during this time. And so to Armin and the folks at GCC, thank you, and look forward to having your folks helping our collective community for this event on March 16th.
Yes, it'll be great. You'll be meeting the students, touring the makerspace and the facilities at Glendale, which will be really great. And remember, the following day is the Glendale Community College
right.
Maker Fair. So if you're coming down for that, you may want to stay for Saturday. There's a separate Eventbrite link for that actually, and it's on Workplace. Okay, thanks very much. Moving on. Just another quick heads up. We'll be sending out the Smart Link form link to the annual report shortly. We're in the process of uploading that information and building it into a smart sheet. There's going to be a couple of parts of the annual report, and this will be in addition to the quarterly report for the fourth quarter. Mostly with the narrative, it's going to be more of a reflection, thinking about lessons learned, and it's really a way of investigating what your overall progress was during the year and how that can help you think about moving forward in the second year. We also have, we'll ask for some basic data. Nothing difficult. We're really just using the annual report as a way to create some cumulative totals for the total of our makerspace square footage, for example, and equipment purchases. So like how many 3D printers or laser cutters have been purchased through this first year. So it's really to just help us get some nice nice simple data that can help us tell our story. And Salomon, would you like to mention the student survey and the institutional
right? For many of
data?
you who are familiar with the CTE outcome survey, which is now, I believe, done for all of our colleges, some of you have opted to possibly participate in that from Santa Rosa, I believe it is, who undertook that survey. Anyhow, but it's similar to that where it's a sort of a pre-survey asking students their interest in their various career options. And anyhow, so it's similar to that it will be an alignment somewhat with the CT outcome survey. So you'll see a little bit of that, and we will explain that in a future webinar.
Right. And the institutional
the Institutional Research Office, many of you who work within programs of study understand that there's a process within your institution where there's success data, maybe persistence data, and even units accumulation, things of that nature that already are tracked for purposes of the Strong Workforce and even the Guided Pathways Initiative statewide. So information that you already have within your institution would be asked, except that the only intervention that you may have to help us out with is to identifying students that have participated within your makerspace. So if it's, for those of you that have check-in booths, that's great. For those of you who have classes, you would have the rosters. So anyhow, so there's things like that we'll go into in the near future.
Okay, thanks very much. And now Salomon's going to take us through a review of where we are with the internship process for CCC Maker, and let us know, Salomon, when you want me to advance the slides, because I have them on this one. So go for it.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to take this time and please type any questions within your chat box that you have here so we can address them as we go forward. This is really, I'm going to try to articulate what many colleges who have already sort of jumped the gun and have been very active within the Career Catalyst contract process with the foundation, have been working through the foundation and its process of onboarding students and onboarding employers. So really thank you for all those colleges who have taken this initiative and have sort of run with it. And I'm just sort of catching up, getting all the questions and all the input and all the concerns and trying to articulate it in a method that I think will address some of the questions and some of the concerns that many of those folks have addressed, and also try to help the others that are coming along the pike, and giving you guys a heads up of some of the things that you may want to consider as you're shaping up your program with the foundation and Career Catalyst, and of course your internships within your institution. So if you haven't engaged heavily, please start with this FAQ link that Deborah has here. I've sent it out many times. I try to put a compendium of all the questions within this one form. It's a pretty long and dense website, but work through it, and I think it's a method for us to share concerns. So I hope this helps for everyone. So Deborah, we'll get to the next slide so we can talk about some of the latest. Okay, so again, this is folks that are further down the pike. So again, if you have questions about how to get started, please look at the FAQ. So we're going to do a deep dive into a little bit of the Career Catalyst risk management, which there's a lot of questions related to this that many of you have to explain to your business offices. And so I want to make sure to spend some time to walk you through a bit of the legality of it. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to use legal terms, but so that you understand the relationships of all these documents and the contracts and the waiver forms and things of that nature that you should be aware of, and should advocate for the use or not use of certain forms depending on your situation at your college. So a little bit of the risk management. First of all, the foundation and the benefit of using the Career Catalyst program through the foundation is that it covers a workers' compensation liability. This is a long-term sort of insurance that is for students that are hurt on the job, right? And so there's certain aspects to the different not only location of the employer, but also the job description of what the student will be doing, that the workers' compensation liability insurance may even have various rates. So for example, if you have a welding student doing a welding internship, that may have a different rate than, for example, a CAD student or someone doing more computer-aided work. And so those things are taken into account within this workers' compensation liability. And the foundation totally accepts that, and that's what the purpose of the Career Catalyst, such that employers don't have to carry that insurance. That said, the foundation does transfer general liability and federal employment labor law to you, the college, or to your college, not to you personally, the college. Now that's what the contract within yourself and the foundation, your college and your foundation, pretty much provides that structure. Now, the foundation, though, understands that and has articulated in many other previous webinars, you've heard Nicole and Renee articulate this, that it's the best practice to then transfer that liability and to use forms that they've provided, like the worksite agreement. And so that's the sort of the transference of that risk management for your college to assure yourself that the employer is following federal employment labor law, and that they have themselves general liability in case the student slips in the parking lot, for example, or if the student is harassed, right? Those are the transference of that risk management that the worksite agreement pretty much structures around that. Now, some employers may not want to sign that, and there's been a lot of concern about that particular process of employers signing that general liability and taking that upon themselves, and that's totally understandable. Some colleges don't even want to extend that because of the implications that may have with future partnerships, or even the structuring of that legal framework is not something that the colleges typically have the risk to do. They may be risk averse to do. So keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that point a little bit later with the internships and some ways that you can structure those so that you can maybe still accomplish the numbers, even though students may not go to employer sites. So I'll come back to that point in a moment. I just wanted to take the time to address the way that the risk management sort of gets transferred from one entity to the next. Lastly, the student typically does sign waivers of sorts that the student themselves sort of waive accidents and activities related to this aspect. So the student liability, there's several waivers that the foundation has them to sign. One's called the recommendation release. So in theory, an employer can actually go to the foundation, because recall, they're the employer of record. So a future employer of your student can contact the foundation and get a recommendation from them if need be. Probably, how long have they worked? Beyond that, I don't think they can assess the nature of the student and if whether or not they how they performed on the job, unless they miss punches or have issues of those sort of transactions. But nonetheless, the foundation has the students waive the liability for the foundation to actually provide reference checks of students. So that's one liability waiver you need to be aware of, as well as any accidents related to the foundation activities, not the employer activities, not the workers' comps, but the foundation, whatever that may be. So just wanted you to know of that one particular liability waiver. You may want to consider a liability waiver as a best practice and using a general release form similar to a field trip form. Now, a lot of you may have a generic field trip form for your courses when you go to maybe a trade show or an employer site. So that would be the form that you would use as a student is sent to release some liability to the college to the student. And lastly, the employer themselves may have their own general release form for accidents and those sort of things. So those are things that you just need to be aware of, and the student needs to be aware of, that there may be some waiving of their rights for accidents through those three entities involved. So those are some of the concepts that have been brought up with questions and concerns and paperwork as things get shuffled around, and I wanted just to kind of walk you through that one portion of it clearly. How it relates to internships, we're going to go to the next slide and talk a little bit more about that. The internships themselves, for those colleges have been very active with engaging employers, creating a campaign around work-based learning within their colleges. All the efforts that are being involved, it is a lot of effort. You have to have a lot of folks helping you out to raise awareness and to bring employers on board to even accept an internship. Now, I'm going to focus on the option 2, the teamwork approach for internships, only because there's a lot of calories involved with the option 1 of pairing one student with one employer and having them attend that place of employment, compounded upon the fact that that employer may or may not want to sign the work site agreement as stated previously due to the risk management aspect to this construct. So that said, option 1, due to the effort involved, due to the risk and liability involved, has proven to just take a lot of time. And I have heard that from several folks. I've spoken to many of you at different lengths, and I can assess collectively that it does take time. And I think that's just to be accepted. Yet, why we advocated for us to have other options within this initiative of CCC Maker, especially because a lot of you are creating very valuable assets of your maker spaces, we felt that we advocated for option 2, where the employer commits to 20 hours in attendance at your makerspace, in which you address a team of students. You collectively with the employer perform a project-based instruction with a group of students of 3 or 4 students, where they're essentially they're guided through a real-world problem from the employer's point of view. Now, this effort of bringing the employer in, of course, is a bit different than the option 1. You may just have them sort of develop create a volunteer form at your HR office to have them attend your makerspace, because there's also some liability of having people, come over to your campus that you invite. So that may just be the only sort of paperwork in that regard, is having the employer create that volunteer work. But beyond that, it's a benefit to you, because you can increase the throughput of your internships. Remember, these folks can get paid for this work, 20 hours. You can create a culture of professionalism and teamwork within your makerspace, because they're actually working within that space, and you're seeing employers coming in, and so that raises the the level of professionalism that students sort of have to employ while they're working on those projects. And there's also the concept of just promoting connection to external employers, to just sort of the makerspace being a hub where they go and seek out talent and bring problems. And so it lends to a lot of great energy and ecosystem building to provide option two and to afford option two. It's a different thinking. I think there's maybe a different way of going about raising awareness of this option and securing the employers for this option. But yet, at this point, it seems like those that have attempted that option are seeing a bit more dividends pay off with the activities that have been involved. So that's why I want to bring that to light and sort of talk a little bit about option two and what you may want to consider for increasing your internships within your institution. I wanted to address a separate option for many of you that have been brought up, and that's how do we include other internships within your makerspace that is not necessarily an option two type. And let me be more specific. Many of you have had students who have either had an internship already for credit, for example, or for pay. Some of your students are working already and are contributing greatly to an employer in that regard, but are still involved within your ecosystem of your makerspace. And so I've received a lot of questions of how do we have those students work in our makerspace, and can we pay them through the internship option? And so after much thought and consideration of the Chancellor's Office recommended practice of that the employer should evaluate the students, I'm going to take that as sort of the lead to say, if you have a student who has completed an internship or a paid internship and does have an evaluation of of an employer. In other words, the student has already been evaluated by an employer, and you can obtain that from your internship office, or maybe you can obtain that because you can address the employer directly with with your efforts. And if you have that, then having the student work within your makerspace to, once again, increase the level of community, increase the ecosystem, transfer knowledge, develop mentorship models, develop training presentations, workshops, technical presentations within your makerspace to go ahead and use the student and their experience and their benefit to you, and pay them through this option two, although it's sort of asynchronous. The evaluation already happened, and you're just using the experience to cultivate that further within your makerspace. So that would be a considered internship type level that would help your makerspace have the student paid for their effort and benefit and grow your ecosystem as stated because they've already been evaluated by an employer. So, and again, you would be the time card manager for their efforts, so you sort of set up the right timing and whatever schedule that would be pertinent to that particular project for that one student and helping you in your makerspace there. So I wanted to pose these two as sort of options to, once again, increase your opportunities to create internships within your makerspace, because both of them relate to using your makerspace and leveraging your makerspace to increase that work-based learning opportunity. And I think we're within the line of what the Chancellor's Office recommended, and in the case of the employer being on campus, it will avoid essentially the work site agreement. You may have to articulate this to some of your business offices for those of you that are still on the fence with your business office holding up the contract because of this work site agreement. Yet some of you if you can articulate, or I would be more than glad to talk to your business office and address these sort of terms that would be amenable to, once again, have you sign the foundations agreement, the Career Catalyst agreement, so that you can access the funds, pay your students, but be within your makerspace. And that may be sort of something we need to work out individually for those colleges that are still holding out. Yet I do think it's quite feasible to be able to do this within this construct here. Okay, I know that was a lot. It's probably, for those of you who have not participated in trying to get some of this function to work within college, you may be having to review this and maybe at a future point, but that's why we record these webinars, so you can look at them later on in the future. Deborah, was there anything specific that I may have missed based on our discussions, or anything that wasn't clear that I can maybe address again?
No. I just think that this idea of being able to create a post internship professional development experience, basically within the makerspace for the student who's completed the internship, is really valuable, because they are now a person that other students can look to for, as a mentor, which I think is a really strong idea. They can become an outreach person, using their experience to communicate and bring other people into the makerspace. And their experiences may also help drive curriculum through presentations that through their experience, they're bringing knowledge and opportunities and ideas back in and sharing them after the fact, which can then, contribute to updating curriculum. So I think it's a really valuable approach. Also, I know that I agree completely that option 2 is going to give you the most return on your investment in terms of time and resources. And it can also help to build community by creating these teams that can then continue to share the information within the makerspace. And clearly, the main objective with this is that the project that the employer brings into the makerspace is something that can also energize the entire makerspace, because the work is being done within the community. So it makes everything really visible, and people who are aspiring to internships can learn more about what's involved just through observation as well. So I think it's really a valuable approach. I'm curious, Salomon, if the employer, because they're now coming to the makerspace and working with the team, is there a value that we can place on their contribution that would then become part of their match?
Yeah, some of you are counting employer hours for their match, and I think that's a quarterly report measure that you can obviously account for there, how many hours they're spending. Obviously, yes, absolutely, that would count towards that match. Obviously, the employer is sort of donating their time, either during work hours or after work hours, but the idea is that the employer isn't necessarily getting paid for this internship. It's a benefit to the college. Obviously, the value to the employer is that they may get better prepared a workforce for their future hiring, right? So it is an investment, it is an in-kind, and it should be counted. And just to go back to these different models that will, I think will definitely grow your internship opportunities within your makerspace. Just to throw something else out there, it's definitely a moonshot. It's not something that would be easy to accomplish, but I'm just putting it out there that some of you may want to consider talking to your purchasing office and stipulating any contract that you may have with any local vendor to be amenable to work-based learning if you're going to do business with your colleges. This is probably something that's maybe too far out there for some folks to consider, but there's no reason why any local, whether it be your local IT service that's providing service to your college, local facility service that's facilitating implementation of any technology within your college, or facility work within your college, any architect or firm that's working within your college, etc., would have that as a stipulated, agreed upon opportunity for your students to do business with your college. So just to put that out there for some of you brave souls who would like to advocate for more work-based learning in your colleges.
Great. Yeah, I see, John. Were you saying this in response to John Grauty's question?
Yeah, John had a question. I believe it's his own facilities department at the college, and that's totally plausible. Absolutely. Now, remember, the foundation would be the employer of record once again for the payment. Right, the student would get being paid by the foundation. That's why. Yet your college would be, of course, the employer site. There would be no need for work site agreement because you are the employer and the reviewer. But if a student of yours is working with your facilities department, that would be a very plausible internship opportunity.
Great. I also saw, Brittany, you had your hand up there for a second, but it's since gone down. If you have a question, you want to just type it in the chat box. That would be great. Unless your question has been answered. But at this point, if you have a question specifically for Salomon, please type it in the chat, and we'll address it now.
Or look us up in Workplace, or send me an email, or some of you just call me, which is great. I'm typically available, and we'll take a call as well for a quick chat, because this isn't trivial, developing these sort of opportunities, because of the complexity of the legality, the programmatic preparation, and even some of the human interactions that are just involved in this.
Yeah, I see Brittany's typed her question. I guess the question is, can it only be done in the makerspace itself? I'm not sure what she is referring to there, but could it be done as a combination of in the makerspace and at the place of employment?
The way I presented it is definitely at the college, only because of the fact of the premise of difficulty with the worksite agreement with employers, as a way to not having that to be an issue. Yet, let me back up a bit and maybe explain how option 2 even just came about. The idea was that some employers may not have the space or capacity, or even the technology that the colleges may have, and therefore using the makerspace, where there of course will be opportunity for students to work and have the access to the technology, was really why the option 2 sort of came about, more so than others. There was also considerations of travel. Some students do not have access to transportation as easily to certain places and things like that. So it was really within the facilitation of the internship in mind, or opportunity in mind, not the legality aspect to what then has progressed to what was discussed here. So the option 2 is really meant for that purpose, facilitation of access more than anything. And so if a worksite agreement is a prevention of access to employers, I guess you can also categorize that under option 2. But it doesn't have to solely just be within that makerspace. If they need to go to an employer site, then you would have to undertake all the worksite agreement and other legality of the forms that are involved with, of course, to do that.
All right.
Okay. Great questions.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We have one from David. Our conceptual framework surrounds design thinking. Can this be a design firm coming to campus and doing a 20-hour workshop for our maker students, even if it is not in our maker center?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be within the center, I would say. I mean, yet again, we hold that premise of will they be evaluated for their development of some artifact, whether it be a process or product, that this firm would be then providing some evaluative feedback to the student, right? And that can really happen anywhere. But I think that's just one thing that we want to hold, is that they do interact with an employer or a potential employer for 20 hours, and they get evaluated of whatever they perform through that process. So, just maybe I don't know, David, if this is specifically to this situation, but let me just back up in general. There's been also some questions related to the preparation of students for internships with training. And Deborah and I spoke at great lengths at the beginning of some of your preparation of how you may want to structure your makerspace with orientation or even workshop training that can be with badges, for example. And that's how that came about. So there is a preparatory effort that would be involved in all students as they attend an internship for evaluation of an employer. And that preparation doesn't only have to be classwork. As stated, it can be these workshops and these other opportunities for students to prepare themselves within your makerspace. So I did want to differentiate that. There's the preparation phase, the application phase to the internship, and then obviously the evaluation phase of any internship. So I leave it up to you to discern if this opportunity is more of a preparation phase. If so, then consider those students to be prepared in a capacity like design thinking, but then they need to be sort of evaluated with that effort and that learning at a site or some project that they work on maybe afterwards.
So yeah, and just to reiterate, the preparation for the internship is not a paid opportunity. The criteria for an activity such as a design thinking workshop, for it to be eligible as a paid internship, it would have to be a real world problem that's related to the employer's work. So in other words, it should be something that's directly related to an actual project at the employer's workplace, not necessarily directly on a project, but it should be within the framework of the work of that organization. So we're not talking about an academic workshop in design thinking. We're talking about an applied real world project that the students would be actively producing a solution for.
And just as a follow-up, only because there's been other questions that folks have been asking about this. There was a question about whether or not students can actually undertake multiple paid internships through the foundation. Now, we haven't reached that level of, saying, we're running out of internships. We're not there yet. Yet, I think it was understood that obviously want to increase the experience of students. Therefore, having one student, one paid internship would be at least the way we go forward. Yet, what has been brought up is that, as Deborah was articulating, in a project, there's a design phase, but maybe another firm or the same firm may be doing the implementation phase or the testing phase. And so there may be different phases within a project. The employer may want a student actually undertaking different phases within a project, or ideally in the case of having more students involved, you have different students involved in different phases. So the point being is that any opportunity that you have within an internship, there may be a design thinking phase, which is always the pre-work, before they even actually articulate maybe the manifestation of a solution, and then of course the testing, and then maybe final implementation or manufacturing of the actual artifact. So there's several phases. There's opportunities for many students to undertake within one employer a variety of different phases within the same project. And those are little caveats of knowledge that I think some of you are developing when you talk to employers and getting that fine-tuned to even describe the phases within a project that you may want to consider wrapping around multiple internships within a real-world experience the employer brings to light. So anyways, I don't know if that makes much sense, but those are some of the sophisticated questions that I know I'm getting from some of you, which are great. And again, Deborah and I are here to listen and to kind of help you out through it. There's just a couple of things we always reiterate as a student being evaluated. Are they being prepared? Is your makerspace being involved? And some of those things are just really the communication that we carry forward from the Chancellor's Office recommendations for this initiative.
Yeah, and just one other aspect that I realized as you were just saying that, Salomon, is that ideally you're setting up a system. This is the goal is not necessarily to create a series of individual standalone internships. The idea is really to create an ongoing relationship with employers so that it's not just easy for you to provide students that can be successful in the internships, but it makes it easier for the employers to take on interns as a matter of course, so it can become self-sustaining. Because it's absolutely true. If it's a one-on-one, single intern student with a single employer, and you've got to renegotiate it every time, it's enormously time consuming.
Right.
But if you can ensure that the students who are going into this internship have been adequately prepared, that the work that they're entering into is appropriate, that the employer is offering a valuable workplace learning experience for the student, and if you can get that set up so that it runs itself, that would be ideal. So that's why we're emphasizing the prep on the students so much. We want those students to be successful so that the internship providers will welcome them back and increase your numbers and make it part of your regular relationship with the employer.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? We've got just a couple of minutes left if anyone has any other questions they'd like to add. Or if anyone would like to jump in. Nope. Oh, okay, we do have one more question. Brittany, if we do find a vendor that already has a contract with our college, do they still have to fill out all release forms? For example, would our college's IT department that resolves issues for the district still have to fill out the forms?
Oh, this is a vendor that works with your college. Well, I guess it depends. If the vendor's coming to your college, again, similar to the volunteer, and probably the forms you already have them filled out probably would be enough if they're at your college.
Though their contracts, the forms may not be specific to the foundation.
Correct.
So under those circumstances.
But if it's your IT department, that's actually your college. That's your college employees. Sorry. So maybe there's two questions there in that one. The IT department, it's your own college that's the employer, so you wouldn't fill out those forms because there is no worksite agreement of necessity. Your college would be the one responsible, and obviously you're on the same side of the fence there, so you're not transferring any risk. You are taking all the risk. In colleges, as long as students are registered, they're covered, as you're well aware, with all the general liability insurance that your colleges carry.
Though if wouldn't that be different if it was an external vendor that was then working on site?
Well, yeah, if it's an external vendor, then they have to go through the HR office to probably include them as a volunteer at least. And depending on your college and how they do that, sometimes there's a background check even for volunteers. So that's why that's important to have that as part of the process if they're attending your makerspace, to make sure that HR knows that you are welcoming this individual from the outside to work with your students. But that would be separate than the vendor agreements they may have just for selling, IT hardware to the college.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then I think we're done for the day. This is good. We've kept it just under an hour. We'll be posting this webinar on the website, so you'll be able to access it there for future reference. Please remember you can contact Salomon or me with any questions. Salomon obviously is the expert on internships. If you're interested in some of the other things that we mentioned at the beginning, please don't hesitate to contact us. Any questions about the Glendale Symposium and the Folsom Lake, please let me know and I'd be happy to help. We look forward to seeing you again next week. So we'll be back on our regular weekly schedule from now on. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week and in the future. So thanks very much, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Goodbye.